With us now is Congressman Cory Mills, the Republican from Florida. Congressman, thanks so much for being with us. Overnight, the president did float the idea of regime change in Iran. This morning, White House officials saying he was simply asking the questions. But very clearly yesterday, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said regime change is not the goal here. And Vice President J.D. Vance said the same thing. Which side are you on? Are you on sort of team regime change or team this is not regime change?
Well, first, let me just go ahead and say that the president didn't necessarily advocate for regime change, and it's not something which is historically unprecedented. Since 2018, we've had tremendous amounts of opposition protests for a pro-Iranian democracy, anti-regime. This is something that Reza Pahlavi, the exiled crown prince, has talked about at mass. And also, if you think about what our strikes were targeting, it's exactly what the president has said from the very beginning, to not allow Iran, the largest sponsor of terror, to actually have nuclear enrichment program capabilities to be able to create a nuclear bomb. This is an existential threat not only to Israel, but to the stabilization within the Middle East, but also America. So the president's been very, very consistent in the idea that he wants to have a diplomatic channel, but he also has been consistent that Iran cannot possess a nuclear weapon. So does the Iranian people in the tens of millions want to see a free, democratically elected? Yes, they do. You've seen this even after the execution, torture, and murder of Mahsa Amini, a young Iranian woman who refused to wear a hijab that was punished by the mullahs. So I think that what you're seeing is decisive action, but it's strategic and it's very accurate on what they're trying to achieve here.
Do you, Congressman, support U.S. military action for the purpose of regime change?
No, I don't think that the U.S. should be a nation building like George W. Bush times. I don't think that we should continue to expand our soldiers' footprints like we saw under the Obama administration. But I also don't think we should be weak on our adversaries, releasing tens of billions of dollars in fungible assets like we saw under the Biden administration, or allowing oil exportation at a record level to China on a sanctioned nation that's allowed it to continue to sponsor terrorism.
Again, I'm asking specifically about regime change. You say, no, you don't support U.S. military action for the purpose of regime change, even airstrikes. So you would not support airstrikes if the goal is now or becomes regime change?
The goal for us has never been about regime change. And again, I'll just say it once more. The president's been asking for a diplomatic solution to this from the very beginning.
The president has said before,
I mean, you can continue to interrupt or you can let me finish.
Oh, go ahead, Congressman.
So the idea is that we made it very clear from the beginning that the IAEA, who's no friend to Israel or any of the actual people in the region, has said that the enrichment capabilities have exceeded what they've even thought was possible. So that really poses an existential threat. That's what the president has been trying to mitigate and limit from the very beginning. And so this has never been about regime change. It's just been about stopping the regime from having nuclear weapon capabilities.
I was only interrupting because you weren't addressing what I was asking, which was, again, the future of possible military strikes.
You just didn't like the answer.
Well, then you just interrupted me. I'm asking about the president's new post last night, where he did talk about regime change in a way that did seem different than what we heard. And then I was asking you if you supported U.S. military strikes for the purpose of regime change. But we've established that you do not. So let's move on to a new subject, and that's the role of Congress in this. I want to play some sound from your Republican colleague, Thomas Massie.
We haven't been briefed. They should have called us all back. And frankly, we should have debated this war powers resolution that Ro Khanna and I offered, instead of staying on vacation and doing fundraisers and saying, oh, well, the president's got this under control. We're going to cede our constitutional authority.
So what's your response to Congressman Massie about that?
Well, that's pretty simple. The president, under Article 2, Section 2, has a limited executive war power authority. And it was Congress, though I disagree with it, who abdicated our Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 through 13 war powers with the AUMFs. These AUMFs, these authorized use of military force, has gone on since 1957, 1991, 01, and 02 for the global war on terrorism. So if we consider Iran to be the largest state sponsor of terror, and we know that the 01, 02 AUMFs was built on the idea of stopping terrorism around the globe, it does give the president the necessary war power authorities, and this is not in any way unconstitutional.
So you actually think that Iran is covered with the post 9/11 AUMFs? Let me just ask that flat out. You believe Iran is covered in that?
I think Article 2, Section 2, war power authorities. Yeah, Article 2, Section 2, War Power Authorities of the Executive Branch covers this up to a 60-day period, and there was no declaration of war. This was a precision strike, and this was not for the intention of trying to inflate or escalate a war with Iran. It was just to stop their nuclear weapon capabilities.
Vice President J.D. Vance indicated that it's not clear what's happened to the enriched uranium that is in Iran now. What would you support in terms of ensuring the destruction of that enriched uranium?
Well, again, I think that you have to do battlefield assessment to ensure what was the actual damage that had been impacted. You have to be able to go ahead and assess how far did our bunker bombs and how far did our actual precision strikes actually achieve its overall intended goal. I think very clearly when you look at Esfahan, Natanz, and Fordow, that it has done its job. So I think that, until we get further intel and assessments, I think it's difficult to be able to just kind of armchair quarterback this at this time.
Do you think that the nuclear capability of Iran has been obliterated?
I do. I think that it's been a dire strike for the Iranian who spent over $2 trillion in these capabilities. And you're seeing now where it was limited to dust after a couple of strikes by our amazing warriors and under our great Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, to be able to go ahead and do these types of strikes that has really put Iran into a difficult position to try and advance and go forward.
Again, although, as you also said, need to wait for the battlefield assessment before the armchair quarterback. And Congressman Cory Mills from Florida, thank you for your time. Sarah?